Yo, it's MOPOWERZ, and we are back again, this time on a Wednesday night, doing great things, bringing you great informative information for your BRAIN. That's right, we are in chapter 12 of the Mis-Education of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson. We have 5 chapters left after today. It's 17 chapters total. And I want to thank you all for everybody who's been here and have not said anything in the chat room, or if this is your first time watching the video, I ask that you share the information with relatives, friends, co-workers, anyone that you come into contact with. It is a terrific way to jumpstart your conversation because the things that are said in this book, especially chapter 5, is still present today, despite it being written 50 years ago. I'm just saying, over 50. Over 50, more like 80. Yeah, 80. Chapter 12, The Miseducation of Negro by Carter G. Woodson, Hirelings and the Places of Public Servants. If the highly educated Negroes have not learned better the simple lessons of life, one cannot expect the laboring classes to conduct themselves differently. In the large number of cases, the employers of Negroes in common labor, in which most of them are now engaged, assert that there is no hope for advancement of Negroes in their place of employment because Negroes would not work under foremen of their own color. In other words, the average Negro has not yet developed to the point that one is willing to take orders from another of his own race. While it is true that such an answer is often given as a mere excuse for not placing Negroes in responsible positions when it can be done without any particular trouble, the investigation among Negroes themselves revealed numerous facts to prove that there is more truth than fashion in this statement. Hundreds of employees of African blood families say that they will not work under a Negro. One is afraid that the other may prosper more than he does and be recognized accordingly. Jealousy. Some of these instances are interesting. A head of one of the government departments in which Negro women are employed to do unskilled labor reports that he placed in charge of the group of these workers an intelligent colored woman who seemed to have all of the necessary qualifications which he had found in other women thus employed. Those working under her, however, refused to obey instructions, kept the place in turmoil, and soon destroyed the morale of the whole force. As soon as he placed a white woman in charge, however, order was reestablished on the premises and everything moved along smoothly. That's a damn shame. Another employer conducting a wholesale business placed a Negro foreman in charge of the others of his race to function as one of the most important departments of the establishment. The Negroes working under him, who had formerly taken orders without question from the white foreman, soon undertook to take liberties with the promoted Negro and to ignore his orders, knowing that the Negro foreman was well qualified. However, in being personally interested in him, the employer, instead of doing what so many others under such circumstances had done, dismissed those who refused to cooperate and supplied the vacancies with others until an efficient working force could thus be obtained. Only a few employers, however, have had such patience and have manifested such interest in the advancement of the Negro. As a rule, they merely dispose of Negro foremen with the excuse that one Negro would not take orders from another. Do you agree with that? Look at where you work at. If I were your supervisor and you look like me, would you take orders from me? I'm just saying. Now, this is back then. This is a form of self-hate and continued enslavement of the mind. Sad, but true. And if you are of a like-minded person that I just read about, you need to go look at yourself in the mirror and probably, just cut your own TV off, because you are a disease to those who look like me and those who look like you. This refusal of Negroes to take orders from one another is due largely to the fact that slaveholders taught the bondmen that they were as good as or better than any others, and therefore should not be subjected to any member of their race. If they were to be subordinate to some one, it should be to the white man of the superior culture and social position. This keeps the whole race on a lower level, restricted in the atmosphere of trifles which do not concern their traducers. The greater things of life which can be attained only by wise leadership, then they have no way to accomplish. They don't. How many Black leaders do we have? And many of them sell out. What do you do? What do you do? You have to change your thinking. You have to change how you look at yourself. You can't change the way you look at other people if you can't understand that you too have to do some changing. And more than likely is mentally, because this is where we are miseducated at, mentally, which consequently kills us spiritually. Because that which we see and that which we think is two totally different things, or that which we think should be two totally different things. Remember, we've been reduced to preachers and teachers. Think about it. What have your Black politicians done for you? Even the Black president, what did he do for you, Black man? I know that he gave the Jews reparations. I know that some other cultures of people got some form of stimulus package from him for their own little set-aside thing. We didn't get nothing. Maybe because I didn't vote for him, you didn't get anything because you didn't ask for nothing. You got caught under the illusion that he would do it all by himself, even though he was just a pawn in the game of chess. And you helped put someone like him in office that looked like you on Front Street for them. But by the time the man got out of office, did you notice what his hair was like? Did you see Barack Obama's hair when he got out of office versus when he went into office? The highly educated Negro, the young senator from Illinois. Let me get some water here. I got some peanut residue going on. Peanuts are great. Great source of protein. The strong have always used this as a means of dealing with the so-called weaker races of the world. The Caucasian arrays the one against the other so that they may never combine their forces and thus deprive their so-called superiors of control over them, which they could do easily if they organized. One white man was thus able to maintain himself on a plantation where there were 30 or 40 slaves because the Negroes were miseducated in such a way as to keep them divided into distinct factions. If you don't understand the Willie Lynch syndrome, this is a very prime example of that. However, when you read the Willie Lynch syndrome, you will find how the slave masters pitted, meaning started nonsense against the older, slave versus the younger slave, male versus male, and the same way with the females and everything else that was in between. In fact, about it, if you read Elijah Muhammad's lessons, Supreme Wisdoms, you would find that why was in the question in English Lessons 101, he asked, why did the original people kick the Caucasians out of Africa? He said because they started making trouble among the righteous people. And that's how you conquer and divide. And it still works today, as you can see. And in fact about it, he don't even have to do that anymore because we do it to ourselves. We've been so miseducated and so pitted against one another, we can barely stand the sight of one another. And that is sad. And I keep using the example of being on a Chicago train or Chicago bus, CTA. Can you feel the tension on that public transportation with all of those people who look like you? I'm just saying. I remember back in the 70s and in the 80s, it wasn't that way. We had love for each other. You have a gang fight, but you wouldn't have a gang gunfight. Not in the very early 80s and late 70s and early 70s. It was about love. But now, as always, they skillfully changed the music. I'm just saying. Remember, music plays a role in how you feel and how you think, and even have an influence on how you will act out or execute your plan, your thought, your mission. Music can play a very vital role in that. As I stated, in petty strife, their power would be lost in the process of attrition. Today, we find the same thing in Africa, where this end is reached by embittering one tribe against another. And it worked the same way in India until recently, when it began to break down under the masterful leadership of Gandhi. And Gandhi, he was a racist too. Gandhi was a racist. If you don't believe me, just read his book. Just read about Gandhi, and you too will find out how he treated those people that came from Africa while in India. And if I'm not mistaken, he has some freaky stuff going on with young kids. Look that up. I'm not lying. Check it out yourself and research it for yourself. Then you'll get a understanding for yourself versus a vision from my eyes, from what I've read. And if you've come up with the same version that I did, well, you know, Cheerios. I'm just saying, the Negroes of the United States have followed leadership slavishly or slavishly, but sometimes, unfortunately, that of those leaders who are selected for them by the producers of the race. They are selected, not elected. They are selected. All of your politicians are selected and not elected. Important for you to understand that. The enemies of the race, for example, will find a Negro willing to do certain things they desire to have accomplished and will finance him and give him sufficient publicity to get before the world to do their bidding. It happens all the time. Right, Al Sharpton? I'm just saying, which he may dispense among his followers as a result of his influence and economic position, will bring him the adequate number of Negroes for the constituency which he desires, which is their bidding, the traducers. Okay. Yeah, traducers, Traducers, traducers. Okay. Negroes, however, sometimes choose their own leadership, but unfortunately, they are too often of the wrong kind. Negroes do not readily follow persons with constructive programs. Almost any sort of exciting appeal or trivial matter presented to them may receive immediate attention and temporarily, at least, liberal support. When the bubble collapses, of course, these some followers will begin to decry Negro leadership and call these misrepresentatives of the group rascals and scoundrels, inasmuch as they have failed to exercise foresight. However, those who have deceived them should not be blamed so as much as those who have liberally supported these impostors. 1933, the miseducation of the Negro. Yet, the fault here is not inherently in the Negro, but in what he has been taught. The Negro point of view, therefore, must be changed before they can construct a program which will bring them out of the wilderness. And there were a few black men who tried to do that. Marcus Garvey was one. Elijah Muhammad was one. Malcolm X was one, but he got his TV cut off. Louis Farrakhan, but he ended up merging with the devil man. L. Ron Hubbard, the Scientologist. Go in LA and see, don't you see the brothers of the Nation of Islam represent Scientology? Actual facts. Actual facts. Isn't that what Elijah Muhammad said? These are actual facts. That is an actual fact. Even King, and then you had the Southern Leading Conference, SELC. You had Panthers. You had the Student Nonviolent Committee. We had a lot of movements. It is our fault. There's no excuse today. If you know better, you should do better. But it seems like the more that we say that we know, the dumber that we really get. I'm just saying, because the numbers and the math and the production of that which you say you have sense of is not making any sense. And it's not just making not any sense to me. It's not making sense to the whole world. We are the laughing stock of the world. Stop me when I'm lying. I'm just saying. The Negro's point of view, therefore, must be changed, therefore, before they can construct a program which will bring them out of the wilderness. For example, no good can be expected from one of our teachers who said that she had to give up her class in Sunday schools to accept an extra job of waiting tables at that hour because she had bought a $2,400 coat and her husband had purchased an expensive car. Such a teacher has no message for the Negro child except to show him how to stay broke. Now, I like a lot of clothes. Now, I don't like how Tyler Perry impersonating a woman, and according to his own school of thought, he's not even supposed to do that either. However, he did say something that was very profound. He said, if you like good clothes, you're going to always stay broke. He said, clothes will keep you broke. Very profound, but simple. An example would tend, let me see here. Such a teacher has no message for a Negro child. Her example would tend to drag the youth downward, and the very thought of having such a person in the schoolroom is most depressing. Yeah, you have student loans, and you still be broke as a teacher. You know how long it takes pay a student loan back. That's all. Huh? Yeah. Some people have to pay it back for 20 years. Some people, just figure they'll just die first or something. And all this forgiveness program, all of that is a catch. It's all a catch because the government want they squeeze from you. They want that squeeze from you, straight up. We must feel equally discouraged when we see a minister driving up to his church on Sunday morning in a Cadillac. He does not come to feed the multitude spiritually. He comes to fleece the flock. The appeal he makes is usually emotional. While the people are feeling happy, the expensive machine is granted, and the prolonged vacation to use it is easily financed. Thus, the thoughtless drift backwards towards slavery. Keep believing in Jesus. Keep believing in Muhammad. Keep believing in whoever you want to believe in. But religion is not going to do it, and it's not going to change your situation. If religion would have changed the condition of Black people, look where we would be today. I think we're the most religious people on the planet, not to mention spiritual. I'm just saying. And I mean, we come from all different sets. We gang bang from every boxing religion, okay? I'm just saying. When you see a physician drive to one's door in his Pierce Arrow, you cannot get the impression he has come to treat the patient for a complaint. He has come to treat him for $1. Such physicians, as a rule, know less and less medicine as the years go by, although they make much money by learning human psychology and using it for personal gain. With leeches of this type feeding upon and all but impoverished people and giving them nothing back, there can be no hope for advancement. Ask T.D. Jakes. Ask Creflo Dollar. Ask Shirley Caesar. Ask Yolanda Adams. I'm just saying. No people can go forward when the majority of those who should know better have been chosen to go backwards. But this is exactly what most of our misleaders do. Not being learned in the history and background of the race, they figure out there is no hope for the masses, and they decide then that the best thing they can do is to exploit these people for all they can and use the accumulations selfishly. Such persons have no vision and therefore perish at their own hands. It is an injustice to the Negro, however, to miseducate him and suffer his manners to be corrupted from infancy unto old age, and then blame him for making the mistakes which such guidance necessitates. People who have been restricted and held down naturally condescend to the lower levels of delinquency. When education has been entirely neglected or improperly managed, we see the worst passions ruling with uncontrolled and incessant sway. Good sense degenerates into craft, anger, wrongless into malignity, restraint, which is taught most celerities. Wow, I gotta go back. Good sense degenerates into craft, anger wrangles into malignity, restraint, which is thought most solidarity comes too late, and the most judicial admonitions are urged in vain. Snap, snap, snap. Boom! Damn. Did they hear me? Anybody out there besides me? Did that hit anybody out there besides me? All of those warnings that you get, like when people throw bricks at the penitentiary, when they do a crime and they go to court and they know they did the crime, and the judge says, we're going to slap you on the hand and dismiss the case. Then you do something else. You go back to court and you get the same judge or another judge because they got your record right there. And then this time they say, we're going to give you a fine. Then third time, you might go to jail. Fourth time, prison, etc., etc. You understand what I'm saying now? Those warnings, admonitions, sad but true. In other words, in other words, you need to do what? Stop being miseducated. Stop being miseducated. Philosophers have long concealed, however, that every man has two educations, that which is given to him and the other which he gives himself. Of the two kinds, the latter is by far the more desirable. In all that is most worthy in men, he must work out and conquer for himself. It is that which constitutes our real and best nourishment. What we are merely taught seldom nourishes the mind like that which we teach ourselves. Because ain't nobody going to teach you like you teach you. Don't cheat yourself, treat yourself. Treat yourself to an education versus a miseducation. The same eternal principle applies to a race forced to live apart from others as a separate and distinct group, is as much as the education of the Negro has come from without. We can clearly see that he has received only a part of the development which he should have undergone, or he has developed negatively. The Negro lacks mental power, which cannot be expected from all or ill-fed brains. This naturally brings up serious questions. The people on the outside who are directing the race from afar would take this condition of affairs as evidence that the Negro is not prepared for leadership. What they ought to say is that we have not prepared the Negro to assume the responsibility of his own uplift. Elijah Muhammad tried to bring it to you. Marcus Garvey tried to bring it to you. And somewhere along the way, with both of those, you got misled. One through government, well, both through government, and one through religion. And all of the bureaucracies and those devils in the religion that taunted, I'm just saying. You remember that ballroom in, New York? Yeah, Malcolm. That's what I'm saying. Some say John Muhammad. Some say it was Silas. But clearly, the guys that were just released got how many millions of dollars? So they didn't do it. So who did? I'm just saying. Anyway, right. As to whether or not a white man should be a leader of the Negroes may be dismissed as a silly question. What has color to do with it? Such a worker may be white, brown, yellow, or red. If he is heart and soul with the people whom he served. It just happens, however, that most white men now in control of Negro institutions are not in this required type. Practically all of those with whom I have talked and communicated believe in imposing some sort of disability upon Negroes. Some object to the freedom of intermarriages as a substitute for concubinage, scoff at the idea of the enfranchisement of the Negroes, approve that segregation, and justify the economic exploitation of the race. Now, if these are the persons to elevate the Negroes, to what point do they expect to lift them? And what would the Negroes be when they get there? With the same thought in mind, a white director of Negroes recently said to the author, I realize that I have no useful function in my present position as a president of a Negro institution. I do not approve of their aspirations to many things. I cannot accept the students in my house as I would white students because it might lead to interracial romance. Marrying is such a difficult problem at the best that I should not like to see any one of my children make a failure in life by marrying a Negro. In other words, continued he, we live in two different worlds. While I am among them, I cannot become a part of them. How then can I help them under these circumstances? I am acquainted with other white educators at the head of Negro institutions who will not address a colored girl as Miss, and to avoid the use of a little and speaking to a woman of the race, he addresses them as his kin. One of them was sharply enough to reply to him thus when he accosted her as auntie. Oh, I am so glad that I have found my lost relatives at last. My mother often told me that I had some distinguished kin, and just to think that you are my nephew makes me feel glad. Ooh. Another such exploiter in charge of a Negro college never wears his hat on the campus. His confidential explanation is that he might have to lift it when he meets a Negro woman. Of course, he would never do that. White supremacy would be lost in the Negro school. As we realize more and more that education is not merely imparting information which is expected to produce certain results, we see very clearly the inconsistency of the position of white persons as executives of Negro institutions. These misfits belong to the very group working out the segregation of the Negro, and they come into these institutions mainly to earn a living. They make no particular contribution to the development of education, for they are not scholarly enough to influence educational theory, and they are so far out of sympathy with the Negro that they cannot make any contribution to educational practice. These foreigners are not bringing to such institutions large sums of money which the Negroes cannot attain, for the institutions now directed by Negroes are receiving larger proportions than those under managements of whites. I don't know, not today. That's a whole another 80 years ago dealing with schools. But however, you do have white men who are in charge of black institutions. Hell, in fact about it, how many people do you know that go to Spelman College? Does anybody know who that school was named after? I think that was the Rockefeller family. Was that Rockefeller's wife or something? I'm just saying. Our so-called thinkers or relative. Our so-called thinkers, however, seldom see these inevitable results of this unsound policies. Not long ago, the author wrote the textbook entitled Negro Makers of History. It was clearly adversely criticized by a Negro who said that the book should have had an illusion to cut off the white man who established a certain Negro college. The author had to explain that the book was to give an account of what the Negro has done, not of what has been done for him. The school referred to, moreover, was in no sense a Negro school. It had very few Negro teachers and one Negro trustee. The policy of the school was determined altogether by others without giving the Negro credit for having a thought on education. In other words, it was merely a school which Negroes were permitted to attend. If they picked up here and there something to help them, well, good. If not, may God help them. It is all right to have a white man as head of a college where Negroes attend, or to have a red man at the head of a yellow one. If in each case the incumbent has taken out of his naturalization papers and has identified himself as one of the group which he is trying to serve, it seems that the white educators of this day are unwilling to do this, and for that reason, they can never contribute to the actual development of the Negro from within. You cannot serve people by giving them orders as to what to do. The real servant of people must live among them, think with them, feel for them, and die for them. The white worker and Negro institutions, too, can never be successful without manifesting some faith in the people with whom he has cast his lot. His efforts must not be merely an attempt to stimulate their imitation of things in a foreign sphere. He must study his community sufficiently to discover the things which have a trend in the proper direction, that he may stimulate such forces and thus help the community to do better the good things which it may be capable of doing, and at the same time may be interested in doing. If these people are to be brought to the ideas of foreigners and must be miraculously transformed into something else before anything else can be made of them, such effort would be a fruitless task, like most of the so-called education and upliftment of the Negroes in America. The Negro, in spite of his confinement to the ghetto, has some opportunities to develop his special capacities if they are properly studied and understood. The real servant of the people then will give more attention to those to be served than to the use that somebody may want to make of them. He will be more concerned with what he can do to increase the ease, comfort, and happiness of the Negro than with how the Negro may be used to contribute to the ease, comfort, and happiness of others. Now, that is a true servant of the people. Malcolm died for you. Martin died for you. They were servants of the people. Yes, they both may have made mistakes, and we are going to make mistakes. But those mistakes that are made, don't let those mistakes hinder the further growth and the development as a whole. But that's what we do. We look for the chink. We look for that which didn't go right. We don't say anything about the good. We look for all of the bad in the leadership that has been presented to us, that was elected from the universe and not selected from a political party or organization. When these people were picked that I spoke to you about, they were picked by the universe. We didn't have any organizations that got down like that. I'm just saying. The servant of the people, unlike the leader, is not on a high horse elevated above the people and trying to carry them to some designated point to which he would like to go for his own advantage. The servant of the people is down among them, living as they live, doing what they do, and enjoying what they enjoy. He may be a little better informed than some other members of the group. It may be that he has some experience that they have not had, but in spite of his advantage, he should have more humility than those whom he serves. For we are told that whoever is greatest among you, let them be your servant. And there you have it. Chapter 13 is the next live on this channel. The MOPOWERZ, the Mis-Education of the Negro. If you are not following, press the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, press the share button, press the like button. Share the information, converse about the information. The information is pertinent and it is absolutely on point for that which is still going on today, 80 years later. It's your brother MOPOWERZ, where knowledge is power. And never forget, it's your third eye that makes you shine like jewelry. And if you haven't done so already, don't you ever, ever, ever give up on your dreams. Peace out.